I'm standing in front of a place that's incredibly exciting. Hello, Josh. You're the first. This right here almost became the site of the Oakland A's new stadium until there was a bait and switch and it ended up tearing down a casino over there. This was the Wild Wild West Days Inn, and it was pretty much, I stayed there twice. And the first time was so bad, the Days Inn was so poorly maintained that I wrote not just for fun, I wrote a letter to the president of Station Casinos, the big outfit, here in town, and just said, this facility's bad, like tear down bad. And he, the VP of hospitality, actually called me back, was curious what was going on, and I said, well, I'm not opposed to staying at a really cheap, we got a hello from Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. I'm not opposed to staying in a really cheap place. I'm the king of cheap places. In fact, the town of Mesquite down that way has they can still get a room for not $35 a night anymore, but it's maybe $45 or $50 a night out the door with the taxes. And it's clean. It's simple. It's like a Motel 6. As people walk down the hall, it's a motel as they walk on the porches. You can hear the whole building creak, creak, creak. But it's clean. And this place was terrible. It was priced more than that. I think it was getting into about $75 a night on a weekday night, and it was awful. I mean, just everything was filthy. Every surface. You ever stay in a motel where you wanted to get your sleeping bag out, and we got it's me, Michael the engineer. Hello, and we've got Baz Boo saying good day from Down Under. Fricatech saying hello from Phoenix. Hello. Oh, how are you doing? Just standing here in front of what almost became the Oakland A's stadium when Station Casinos, the company I wrote the letter to because the motel here was so bad. If you ever want to have some fun, try to see if you can find the old listings of the Days Inn Wild Wild West before it got knocked down and find customer photos of how bad it was. And so the company president wrote back. He was really kind. He wanted to get some input, good customer service for Station Casinos. And then he said, as a courtesy, he'd grant me a complimentary night stay. And I thought, well, that's nice of him. But I didn't know until I got the paperwork in the mail, it was a complimentary night stay back at the Wild Wild West. So I went again the second time, and it was just about as bad as it was the first time. So anyway, it wasn't much of an improvement. So having the Oakland A's demolish, it's fine, you can walk by, it's all good. Having the Oakland A's demolish this lot to build their stadium was a huge improvement. Odd place to put it because it's not quite walking distance to the Las Vegas Strip over there. It's and this is where we'll be heading here in just a moment. So you can see off in the distance the completed flyover ramp that when we came here 2 years ago, if you had the privilege of being able to, my privilege of being able to, how do you say this in a polite way? In other words, I appreciate if you came along with me 2 years ago when we went and looked at what was left of this bridge here, when it was half a bridge. We'll check out and see how they finished the project. But to get all the way from where most of the tourists are, there's New York in the distance and stuff, all the way over to here, there isn't really, other than bus service, there isn't really great transit service. It's probably about a mile walk, which we'll do, But your typical tourist, I can understand walking all the way to here, you'd probably have to redevelop this entire corridor over time. It's Las Vegas, it probably could, to be able to get enough foot traffic out here to come to the A's stadium. So for that reason, instead, when the opportunity came up to buy out the old Tropicana casino, blow it up, well, they didn't, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and build it actually on Las Vegas Boulevard. They did that instead, but it came after Station Casinos had bulldozed the Wild Wild West Days Inn Motel. And so I see that as a win-win, but kind of a raw deal for Station Casinos. They thought they were going to be able to cash out and sell this thing for it's quite a bit. It's 50 acres, so it's a big site. All right, let's take a look here at the chat. I have a new phone, and YouTube's updated, so I'm going to hit live chat. And let's see. So we got Jonathan saying, is your camera supposed to be flipped? Or am I upside down? It shouldn't be. Gringo Jan says hi from the Netherlands. Brickatech says, how can I send you a fan art? I am a patron member, but I do not know if there's a way I could send it to you. My business email is news, N-E-W-S, news @roadguyrob.com, which I stole that idea from media places I worked before. Fun. If you ever want to get a hold of a local TV station, just send them an email, news, N-E-W-S, whatever their domain name is, .com. That's usually their assignment desk. And so I copied that, having been from that industry. So that's my news @roadguyrob.com if you want to send me that legit email. 1 a.m. in the Netherlands. Old Timers Club checking in. Josh says, oh my, glad you're up. Jonathan says, you're backwards mirrored left to right. So, okay. Well, this is new. I got a new phone, and by a new phone, I mean I made it to this decade. I now have a used Samsung Galaxy S22, and boy, is it a hassle, because I don't have a headphone jack anymore for the mic. So I have to, with software and things, this is the first time trying to live stream with you at an S-series Samsung, and maybe I've done something wrong. I pushed this thing. Did that fix it? I was trying to flip the camera, and I don't know. Tell me if that's better. Duckstew writes, the writing on the screen is backward on the screen. Okay, we'll see if it's better now. Unless Vegas now drives on the wrong side of the road, writes Jonathan. Are you going to talk about the 401 in Toronto? It's big. I haven't been to Toronto. I'd really like to, I don't know, maybe I should try to get to Canada this year. I don't know. Mirrored. No Zoom. Hi from New York. Okay. On the other hand, with this phone, you look crisp as can be, which is the family-friendly way of saying AF. Okay, well, hopefully, I also switched carriers. I went from the purple cell phone company to the red cell phone company, and I don't know if that's going to make a difference either. I know when we were in San Francisco, it was pretty disappointing, my coverage, so. Okay, hey, we got our first super chat of the afternoon here, or the evening, or early morning, depending where you are right now. And it's from Ortonic Ort, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing absolutely correctly. Ortonic writes, do discuss QC road designation. Rue, Shemin, and Rang. Oh, man. Oh. Here's the little secret. I'm a good researcher. I'm not necessarily smart. I'm good at finding people who are smart and talking to them. So QC would be Quebec, I'm assuming. Rue, that sounds very French. You know, it's kind of funny. The ITE students, Institute for Transportation Engineers, which is the group of professionals who get together who really geek out about this stuff. They had a student conference in LA back in February, and they invited me to go, which is fun. Get to hang out with the undergraduate students and, pretend I'm still young. And they have this game show they do. It's like Jeopardy, called Traffic Bowl. Students under the age of 30 who are undergraduate students full-time, they're able to get together and compete, put their school teams together and compete to see who can win. And it's kind of traffic trivia. And of the questions, I helped write some of the questions. One of the source manuals is the Ontario Traffic Manual, which is sort of the MUTCD road sign manual, road markings manual for Canada. And so IT takes the Ontario Traffic Manual just as seriously and fun as the MUTCD. And that one, boy, you want to see students wipe out, write something from the Ontario Traffic Manual. Although I wrote easy questions. I go, on some of these highways, I forget what they're called, what's the shape of the Ontario highway? And of course it's a crown, right? And they were able to guess that. But we didn't have, being the West Coast, I don't think we had any schools come down from British Columbia. And obviously we weren't getting anybody from Toronto or Manitoba or Alberta or anywhere else. So it was mostly California, Washington, Oregon schools. And so those Canadian questions were just absolutely deadly for their scores because nobody knew what what the answers were. Let's see. Anthony I with a super chat. Howdy, Anthony. Writes, love your road content. Also, great personality. You're kind. Yeah, it's that's the fun thing with roads is it's the celebrity, right? Because we all see this. Hey, you notice, by the way, something you don't even see in California anymore. Now, how do I flip my camera around without messing it all up? Okay. So, we zoom in and look at the lane markings. They're still using Bottas dots in the state of Nevada. California phased these out because if you drive a car with, level 1, level 2 autonomy, the lane keeping assist and, some of the higher end electric cars that have, really good level 2 stuff. Sometimes they can have a hard time seeing those, plastic composite dots that they glue down. They name them after Albert Dots, the Caltrans engineer, who did not get a royalty on them. There was a rumor for like 50 years that he would get a penny for every single one they glued down, and that's not true. He was working for the state of California when he invented them, so they became property of the state of California, And then the thing with traffic control devices is in order for them to end up in the MUTCD as a usable device, they can't have a royalty on them. Okay, I don't know if I flipped again or we'll see if that makes any difference. But the state of Nevada, they're still using those. But yeah, thanks again, Anthony. Jack Terry writes, hey Rob, good to see you at UCLA SLS. That's the student conference I was talking about. Let's see, Aaron says, I bet there's something in the camera app to flip to the selfie cam. Probably. I'm wondering if it's a Samsung setting. And the problem is I don't know how to change that halfway through the game here. I'm afraid I'll break something. Because I've got, YouTube has a little flippy thing, but I think it's to flip front to back. But it's, that's too bad. I wish I'd known I'd change it. But I'm afraid if I try to bail out, it'll pause the stream and make a mess. So, but that's too bad. That means we could have a pretend European live stream and talk about how the traffic's backwards. Well, now you. Is there a way to minimize it without messing up? I'll be right. If it don't go away if I break it here. Let's see. How do I? Oh no. Okay, I tried to go back to the home screen and it says, "Do you want to end the stream?" No, I do not. So. Oh wow, we've got a gigantic, super duper duper big super chat here from Christopher Tiboni, aka the pissed off bus driver. Well, good to see you, Christopher. Christopher writes, any thoughts on how utilities rip up freshly paved roads leading to expedited forming of potholes? I asked you if you could do a video on this a few years back. Yeah, in fact, I have not yet done a video on pavement at all. What was that about? Name and shame. Some poor pedestrian just walking across the driveway, but he had to get him his McDonald's, and so he honked at that person. Shame on you and your Chevy van. So the encroachment of being able to come on and rip up a road. A road's owned by a city or a county or a state. They all have different rules of what they want to do about it. I learned in school, talking to my professor who had worked for the Utah Department of Transportation for a while, that they had a rule that basically they would send out a notice saying, hey, now's your chance. If you want to put in a utility, we're going to be repaving the road next year or the year after. So now's your shot, because we'll be happy to give you a permit now because we're going to be tearing the road up anyway. But once we've redone it, I think Utah had something like 3 to 5 years before they would allow anybody to even touch the pavement, unless it was an absolute emergency. And so you were just out of luck. And so a lot of it's good coordination. If you have where the developers, utility companies, and the road owners all are in communication with each other, then you can prevent that from happening. But and you have to have good administrative policy set up front. You can't just come in and say, well, we're going to suddenly decide, oh, this developer's coming in, he wants to tear the road up, and we just repaved it, so we're going to tell him no. Well, he might take us to court and say, well, you let everybody else tear the road up, why aren't you letting me tear the road up? So you have to be consistent in making sure that you have the same rules applying to everybody at the same time. So you do that up front, coordinate. And then the other is every road owner is different. I don't know. I do not believe this is owned by the state of Nevada here, Tropicana Avenue. I think this is probably Clark County. In some places, like in California, this would be owned by a city. And so and then there's private companies that own their private streets as well. And so a lot of it is getting in ahead of time and just sort of having a consistent policy, good communication, and sticking to it. And there are places that are better at that than others. Obviously entropy is the default of the universe. And so if you end up with having no plan, then, well, you end up with, just Murphy's Law. As soon as they repave the road, somebody's going to rip it up. And you're right, Christopher, that as soon as they take a saw to that perfectly good asphalt, it'll never quite seal the same after that. And it gives a chance for water to intrude. It can start washing away the dirt underneath, the structural soil underneath the asphalt. Asphalt's weak. It's just like a rubbery thing, It's the soil underneath that's the strong part. I would love to do that as I'm slowly crossing through my to-do list of 100 ideas you guys have given me over the years. Talking to an asphalt contractor would be a lot of fun. All the different ways that a road can fail. And then that's the other one is utility coordination of knowing when to know to let somebody chop it up or not. It just really depends. So I'm noticing there's actually quite a bit of pedestrian traffic along this street, and the sidewalk is right up, as you can kind of see behind me here. It's right up tight against the curb. There's no buffer strip. In fact, there's not even a breakdown shoulder on Tropicana, so you have 45 mile an hour traffic right up against the curb. And for the pedestrian volume that you see, which for Western America is that's a pretty bustling sidewalk here. You see any pedestrian using the sidewalk and it's bustling. But I would hope eventually they're planning to change that out and make a better sidewalk. It'd be interesting to see what their long-term plan is. Alexander says, hi, Rob. I can't believe I'm watching this live. Hello from Connecticut, near the Merritt Parkway. Hi, Alex. Annoying James says, hello from Vegas. Christopher says, I used to be an OCT bus driver, but now live in Tennessee. That's got to be a change, going from Orange County to Tennessee, both for good and bad, especially, when you get to storm weather, the spring and the fall. My sister moved to Arkansas, and so there's a lot of being glued to the radio, listening to the tornado alerts. All right, I got to jump ahead. A lot of great comments here. Oh, we got Crystal Walrine with a nice, big, wonderful, juicy super chat here. Crystal writes, I'm not sure whether you've covered this in a previous video, but what's your opinion of Clearview versus Highway Gothic? That's a great topic. What do we do? Let's walk down to the corner while we talk, so we have something to look at that's actually a sign. So there's forever and ever, like going back to the 1950s, the one official highway sign font. And the reason they do that is when you're driving a car, I'm going to flip it around frontwards, so hopefully that looks right. When you're driving a car, you want to be able to see the sign quickly and easily, and there's a lot of crappy fonts out there that would make very bad road signs. And there's a lot of other fonts that, the McDonald's font there on the drive-through signs, probably pretty acceptable. But then you start getting into, well, what about this one here that says McCrispy Strips? It's got serifs on it, the little hats on the Y's and the bottom of the P. Do serifs Are they easier to read than a sans serif font that's just, do you do all uppercase, or do you upper and lower? Do you do dark text on a light background? So the state of California and some other states did a lot of research back in the 1950s about that, of trying to figure out what drivers could read most visibly. And working with other states, they came up with something called Highway Gothic, and it became the official font. The Federal Highway Administration signed off. They said, okay, if you're doing, legit highway signs on freeways and highways and pretty much anywhere, use this font and only this font. And that's what you saw on road signs probably into the late 80s, early, somewhere in the 1990s. And there's some researchers who argued that you could improve the font. Sorry, I'm also trying to focus on the crosswalk here. I haven't spoken with the researchers to get to what their specifics are, but the theory was that you would have, if you just tweaked the road sign font a little bit, it would be a lot more visible and in turn be a safer font. They called it Clearview. I believe they have a copyright on it, a patent on it. So in order to build a road sign, that one's going to be Highway Gothic there where it says Polaris. But if you use Clearview font, you have to pay the creators a small royalty for the font. Probably not all that different than what you see, other commercial signs where, they buy a font off the shelf and have to pay a license for it. So in the late 90s, they got the okay from Federal Highway to say, okay, let's do an experiment. This looks promising. Go out there, and if states want, they can test and try to put it on some street signs and see if it's an improvement or not. And in the decades since, it's been hit and miss. They found that the big green overhead freeway signs, they maybe worked a little bit better. Maybe a little bit were easier to read. And that's why sometimes if you're driving on a freeway, especially in Texas, and you look at the overhead sign, you go, that font just looks a little off. It's not bad, but it just looks a little different, especially if you're coming from another state that uses Highway Gothic. It's really noticeable when they change out the signs, and one of the signs is in Highway Gothic and one of them's in Clearview. But what they found is on stop signs, Clearview doesn't work as well. Speed limit signs, regulatory signs, the white ones like the speed limit sign up here, Clearview doesn't work very well. Clearview worked best on the green signs. And so I think that's caused a big debate within different state departments of transportation of going, well, if we can only use this font on the green signs, where it is probably arguably better, but we can't use it anywhere else, maybe we should just stick with Highway Gothic and not bother trying to use Clearview at all and just have consistency all the way through. Because I don't know that there's that much improvement of legibility of being able to read a big green overhead Clearview text sign on the freeway than there is Highway Gothic, because Highway Gothic's also pretty easy to read. And so it ended up with the Federal Highway Administration rescinding that temporary authorization for Clearview. So states wouldn't have to take the Clearview signs down, but as the signs wear out, the rule was, okay, now you got to go back to the old font, the Highway Gothic font. Well, I don't know what happened, but the Clearview people, it sounds like, went to Congress and got their representative to slip into one of the highway spending bills. I think it was the FAST Act. It might have been the Biden one, the IJ, or Jobs and Inflation and Jobs Act, or whatever it was. But one of those two bills, language that said, you know how you guys rescinded the temporary authorization? Well, never mind, the temporary authorization's back. So, so states can still do an experiment at Clearview, but it's hard to know at this point what the science is really shaking out versus what's politics of somebody trying to keep their, project alive. And so that's where we're at right now with those. As for my opinion, I'm old school. I've always thought that the Clearview font looked a little weird. So I like the consistency that the stop signs and the overhead signs are the same font. If Clearview had proven itself to be good on every background, and you were doing stop signs in the new Clearview font, you were doing speed limit signs in the new Clearview font, and FHWA finally came out and said, okay, this is the new font, and also the copyright's expiring and people can do it for free, I would be fine with it. It's like when a company changes their logo and you hate it at first, but then after a while it grows on you and you just learn that, okay, it's probably fine. I think we'd all, if that had happened 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't even be having this conversation because we'd just be so used to the new font. But because of that limbo we're in, where you have some of the signs in one font, some of the signs in the other font, I just think let's just make them all the same font. Let's use the one that's free, the one we used forever, the one that's pretty easy to read, and But anyway, so that long answer to your question is that's from Crystal Walrine. So thanks again for your super chat about my opinion on the two fonts. Now, if you want to see a good video, almost as good as one I would make, right? No, it's actually an excellent video. Vox Media, Vox Magazine, VOX, has one about the two highway sign fonts, and they talked to the creator of Clearview, and so that was interesting to get into it from kind of the creator's sales pitch as to what the sales advantages of using Clearview. They didn't go so deep in the politics of it because obviously when you're talking to the creator of the font, I'd be like, so what's the deal with slipping that legislation? And I'd probably ask that if I ever got a chance to interview the creator of it. But my problem, partly why I haven't chased the story, is the creator of the federal highway Gothic font back in the 50s, I'm sure, is long in the grave. And federal agencies, I've found, are very professional, despite their reputation. They're actually very, very professional. And they like to defer, they make it very clear, the United States, the way we are, we're just a federal agency. We're here to coordinate funding and so maybe consistency of the rules. We don't really want to talk to you on camera. I've tried to reach out to Federal Railroad Administration one time, and they're like, we're not the people to talk to. You can go talk to states. You can go talk to Union Pacific. You can talk to vendors. But they don't want to talk about it. So I have a feeling if I reached out to Federal Highway and said, hey, let's talk about the font for highways, they'd say, let's go talk to a state. And I'm not sure. Like I say, most stories, you find the source first and then the story comes from the source. It's, I'm not the type to write the script ahead of time because I'm not that smart. We're standing here at the corner where 2 years ago, we were here when this was sort of the frontage road of the 15 freeway at Tropicana here. And all the traffic on the frontage road came up here through this light, across and over. And this was an incredibly busy intersection. In fact, this is a screen grab from the last Tropicana live stream of all the traffic zooming back and forth. And of course, there's the in and out sign right there. And the whole point of this entire project really kind of came down to this intersection here. It wasn't even the freeway itself. I don't think they're adding any additional capacity to the I-15 freeway for this $300 million project, even though they tore down half a bridge to do it. It was really to fix this. So to kind of recap, if you didn't join us, or, it's also been 2 years and, get focused on other things. So this is the old configuration of the interchange here. And so we are standing here. And so all the frontage road traffic, which is quite busy, was having to go through that intersection and back. And the problem is the traffic coming off the freeways backed up waiting for the frontage road here. I believe this is Dean Martin Drive. And so to make this work better, they wanted to be able to pull the frontage road straight through. It would go underneath the ramps and come out the other side. And what that lets them do is these ramps can be almost like a freeway interchange where you have like a free, you turn right and you come down here to a light. And if you want to go left, well, instead you go right and then make a left down here and go under the bridge, right? And the same with here. You want to go left like that, you don't, it's barriered now, so you'd go right and like that. And overall, even though it's more driving, that's going to flow a whole lot better than what they used to have right here with the really busy intersection with all the through traffic going through it. And as a result, you can see there's lots of room here. You know, you have cars backed up waiting to get on the freeway. Well, the line to start turning left to get on the freeway, it starts, flip this around here so I can show you. It starts like clear back here. You can see those cones over on the left-hand side there. That's a nice long line to get over and make a left. And so that's a huge improvement and just so different from what we saw a little over 2 years ago when we were last here. And so it's fun to see this $300 million project start to materialize and come together. Give you some idea that flyover you're seeing there in the distance, picture from our last time we were here. It was, I'm going to zoom out. Yeah, there you go. It was just chopped off because they had to completely redo the side where the frontage road was going to go underneath the ramps. Well, the columns holding the big flyover bridge were in the way of that. So they had to rebuild basically from here over the entire flyover ramp. Huge project, just, you know, like I say. But it shows that, you know, the reputation some of these highway projects get where they say, well, you're spending $300 million just so you can do induced demand and widen the freeway and, you know, valid points perhaps, but not necessarily. Sometimes you're just trying to say, hey, we're not even adding capacity. We're just trying to make what we already have work better. What good is it to have 8 lanes or 10 lanes on the freeway that would be moving, except that cars are stopped at a light here, backing all the way to the ramp, backing all the way down the ramp and onto the freeway, right? So if we can fix the light up here, then we get the freeway moving again. That's not an induced demand thing. That's just being a good steward of what you already built. You don't want a broken thing. So I think it's pretty neat. We'll talk about it more as we walk up that way some more. Got a, oh my gosh. Somebody sent me an emoji as a super chat in a currency I'm not familiar with. So what is an ARS currency? And you're probably screaming the answer, but I'm not down at that part of the chat yet. I'm still catching up. ARS is Argentina. Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. I think you're the first person, and this is from VF9E. You are the first person, VF9E, to do a super chat in Argentinian currency. So that's kind of fun. So it looks like it's an emoji of it's like a little hippo guy sitting in an office chair, which what are you saying? I discovered cheese curds last week. I've never had them. They're not really a thing out west. They're a Midwest thing. But I think it was my mom mentioned that she tried them for the first time. And so, oh, sure, why not? So I went to Freddy's Steak Burgers and said, oh, yeah, give cheese curds, like deep fried cheese. And I'm well on my way to being that hippo in the office chair because I've had a thing of cheese curds every day since I discovered what they are. So they're very good. But anyway, the hippo transforms with the office chair and turns into this mecha hippo. Anyway, it's fun. Thank you very much. I appreciate that from BF9E. Okay, October. That's not October. Okhotsk. Okhotsk. That's my ancestors say words like that. Suppressor with the super chat. Collaborate with Mileage Mike. He discussed Interstate 11. Mileage Mike is a fascinating one. If he's who I'm thinking of, he just gets in the car and drives around and then puts the dash cam footage up online. And a good friend of mine who told me about Mileage Mike, it's kind of just relaxing to just sort of put on where it's, I'm just curious, like, wonder what it's like to drive, Interstate 55 or whatever, and you find it on his channel, and I just put it on in another window, and just, so my friend will call, he'll say, yep, I've driven the entire Interstate 10 from LA to Phoenix, and my friend's never done that, but watching Mileage Mike's dash cam footage, had a lot of fun with that. So maybe I get so busy focused on the video that I'm always working on right now that I have to kind of plan ahead a collab. Mileage Mike ever emailed me, I would probably speed things up, but that's not a bad idea. Okay, let's see. I am way behind here, so I wish I could read every single comment. Isaac Madsen Madsen says, hello from Magna, Utah. Hey, that's my hometown. All right, well, good to see you, Isaac. Right, so there's a debate about whether California high-speed rail should continue or not. What are your thoughts on it? California high-speed rail will happen. Whether we're alive, I don't know, but they've built so much of it that the project's not going back. So even if there's a political win or loss, depending on your perspective, where the project gets shelved for maybe even a decade or 2 decades, it'll get revived. California is, the analogy I use is the Golden Gate Bridge. There was probably a lot of people who were watching the Golden Gate Bridge getting built who said, what a waste of money. Like, for the millions that we're spending on building this just extravagant bridge, do you know how many ferries we could operate? Do you know how many, we could buy everybody in the city their own ferry boat to get their Model T across the river or whatever, right? But we built it, and it's done. And nobody in our age or nobody alive today hems and haws about the cost of the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know if it was a good value or not. All I know is we paid for it, it got built, and now we use it all the time, and we just have a constant toll revenue to maintain it. And so these mega projects, it's very important to be good steward of tax dollars to try to maximize. There's only so many tax dollars to go around, right? So you want to maximize value for the taxpayer, because not that you're trying to get them their money back, you're trying to get them the most for the money that they give you. If you can build 2 projects instead of 1 because you manage the 1 project better, great. But here's the thing. So if California high-speed rail was a small project that was really over budget, I'd be saying, yeah, let's kill it. Let's go do 2, 3, 4 other small projects. But what I've realized, it's the backbone of all the projects. Partly why transit doesn't work in California is because there's nowhere to take the transit to. So in most places, it's like, why would I take a bus? The bus doesn't go to anywhere. In areas where there is light rail, it's like, well, okay, I can take the light rail, but it doesn't get me to where I want to go because the light rail doesn't connect to anything. So if you now have this thing where you go, look, I can get on any transit, and eventually I'm going to end up at high-speed rail, and then I can take that high-speed rail to any other place where there's people living in California, and get off and take another transit, and so you know what I mean. It's sort of like building the freeway for the cars, right? Let's keep walking and talking while I talk about this. But so when you have, here we go. See, it's a no turn on red. I can see why, because if people are coming off this frontage road here and wanting to hit the left lane to get on the freeway, you don't want people making a right on red and darting out in front of, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lanes of traffic. But I know that feeling when you're sitting there going, well, I really want to make my right turn. The street's clear. and I can't because the sign says I can't make a right turn on red. And then the car in front of you is staring at their cell phone, and they're not making that right turn like they're supposed to. Let's see if this guy obeys it. He is. All right, good for him. So yeah, there's your no turn on red sign. It's hard on a project like this. You make some things a lot more efficient, but then where this used to allow right turn on red, I could see that being very frustrating to some people who have to make that right turn every single day, and they're like, oh, they ruined it. Let's see, I think I've got a picture. We'll get back to talking about high-speed rail here in just a second, Isaac, but I think from this spot right here, from our live stream 2 years ago, let's see what it was like then. A lot of other pictures to show you as we're walking along here. Oh, I guess I'm not. I got one as we get up higher, but it's when we get up to the intersection. You can see the half a bridge, the T-Mobile Arena in the background, and now things have changed. California high-speed rail is so huge when you see it in person. I think in our mind we don't realize how big it is, but if you were to take the project and overlay it on the East Coast, it would go across like 5 or 6 states. You know, it's all of a sudden you're saying, hey, oh my gosh, this project's going to be, 100, 200 billion dollars or whatever, and it only runs in California. You're like, oh my gosh, how profligate. This is horrible, You sit there and say, oh, there's this project that's going to run across 6 states. You go, well, that's a lot of money, but, it's going to benefit, 6 states, so I guess it's worth it. So I think some of it is when I've gone and I took a day where I just tried to follow the route for hours and hours and hours through farm fields. And one of the things that really caught my attention was just how every single farm road, every mile or every other mile, they have to build a highway overpass for the road for the cars, because you can't have any at grade crossings with railroad crossing arms coming down, because it's truly high speed. It's not Brightline, it's trying to build a genuine European style high speed train. There we go. There's our before and after. Changed a little bit. Bridge is a little longer than it used to be. Double right turn now. This entire overpass on the left-hand side, they rebuilt. When we were here 2 years ago, we were on the old bridge on this side, and they demolished the bridge on the other side, and they'd done a temporary DDI, diverging diamond. You can see over here what's new, the Dean Martin Drive running directly underneath the ramps. So you can see that on-ramp is now an overpass. It's now a bridge that goes over the street down there. I can say an enormous project with all the bridges and everything they're going to build. Is about something like $300 million or something like that. Or 1/1000th of a high-speed rail, right? So now, are the critics correct that high-speed rail is over budget? Absolutely. I mean, I think the problem was they underpriced the project to begin with. And so they said, how much is it going to cost to build high-speed rail? And they're like, not like that much. And then they're like thinking to themselves, well, I have to say that much because it's probably going to be more like that much. And if I was honest and said it was that much, it wouldn't get built. But then enough years have gone by and inflation and unintended, unexpected challenges, it's kind of more like that much. Right? So if you're a proponent going from that much to that much, you're like, oh, that's steep, but we can make that work. But if you're a skeptic and you're like, or already stressing about that much, and it ends up costing that much, you're like, kill it! But like I say, if you go around, especially around the Fresno area, so much California high-speed rail has already been built that the project will get completed in some future decade. Maybe not for me, maybe not for you, but for kids and grandkids, it will get done. It opens up so much development potential, because if you think about trying to embrace infill, the idea is like California's having a problem of you don't want to just keep sprawling outward more and more and more at the rate California has, because one, you just can't build enough for everybody, and two, you start getting houses into areas that burn down, and that starts to get very expensive. California is joining Florida and some other states of having an insurance crisis, partly because the wildfires are getting more severe, as we saw in January. Those weren't necessarily areas that developed recently. Those were areas that have been around for 70, 80, 90, 100 years. But we don't want to keep building more of those areas that are going to all of a sudden create $1 trillion disaster. And so the idea is, okay, well, what if we took existing areas and got creative and found ways to build up more? Oh, well, if you do that, you got to put in a parking garage. Well, that's enormously expensive. That could almost double the cost of the project. And you make traffic worse, potentially, because now all those cars are going in and out of the parking garage every day, and then people are getting on the freeways and going to work. And so you try to build higher density stuff, and it seems like it's always in the wrong place. I don't mind higher density. I just don't want it right here because it's going to make my street busy. Okay. But what if you could have a whole city within the city? So you have the existing city of Walmarts and Costco's and single family houses, and that's great. Nobody's taking that away. But you take some key areas that are underdeveloped. Downtown San Bernardino. You want some fun, look up the history of San Bernardino. It was an all-American city, and then the Air Force Base closed in the 90s, and it ran straight into the ground. And every hip-hop song you hear singing about straight out of Compton as being the hood. Well, Compton's now kind of gentrified and gotten expensive. It's Palmdale and it's San Bernardino. You can take downtown San Bernardino, which already has the infrastructure in place, the sewer, the water, the gas, the downtown street grid, and really build it up big into something spectacular. And if you have a high-speed rail stop there, because now a bunch of people who maybe work in Burbank, and they can get to Burbank on the train in under an hour each way, and they don't even need to drive 1 mile on the freeway, because when you get to Burbank Station, well, they could build out bus rapid transit or light rail into the Burbank Station. So, there's just so much potential, but that only works if you've got the backbone, the high-speed rail backbone that all the light rail systems and everything can tie into. Like I say, the freeway for the road network, the high-speed rail train for the transit network. It's going to get built because there's, like I say, California, everybody wants, deep down, everybody kind of wants to live there. They might not choose to live there because they don't want to pay the taxes, they don't want to pay the real estate costs, they don't want to deal with the traffic. But deep down, there's a part of all of us that want to be there, and so that there's to just accommodate that demand. It makes sense to just be better use the infrastructure we already have, build up, use the high-speed rail as a backbone. So anyway, that's my lecture on it. That's not getting into the nitty-gritty about whether or not the project's being managed properly. I'm just saying it will get it built. All right. So thanks again to Isaac, and again, hats off to you for being from a cool but forgettable suburb to most people. Okay, boy, you guys have a good chat going on here. I'm missing out on a lot. Ed Mordo writes, I love cheese. Jovette writes, Culver's cheese curds are better. The breading on the Freddy's ones were thinner. Like I'm not there for the breading. Breading's hard on my stomach. I'm there for the cheese. Now that's the Culver's ones are good, but the Freddy's cheese curds were just nice and salty and crispy and just. But Aaron of MPLS, I'm assuming Minneapolis. Aaron with the super chat says thanks, and yeah, pavement could easily be a series. Yeah, I've thought about that because there's a whole thing on pavement management where they try to keep track of all the pavement. There's the philosophy that good pavement is cheaper to maintain than bad pavement, that if you do constant maintenance on it, that could be its own video. The differences between using concrete versus asphalt. I almost was all set to go to Denver a year and a half ago, and then the Colorado DOT people stopped answering the phone. I guess they got busy. But we were all set October of 23 or November of 23 to go out there with Interstate 70, where they built the park over the top of the freeway when they rebuilt that. They experimented with using, instead of metal rebar, they used fiberglass, something like little pieces of fiberglass instead. And the theory is, if you think about the way concrete's built, it should last forever, right? Because it's just a chemical state change. It's not a state change. What do you call it? It's been 20 years since I've had chemistry. But it's a chemical change, right? You put the limestone and the aggregate and everything, the hydration, you put it all together. It chemically bonds into this new thing that is pretty rough and tough in the elements and should last a long time. The problem is, to make the concrete strong, you want to put rebar in it, because the concrete's really strong when you squish it, but if you push down on it, it starts wanting to spread out and tear apart. It's not very strong. So they put metal rebar in it. Well, what happens? Water finds its way through little cracks it makes its way down to the rebar. The rebar rusts. That adds an oxygen molecule onto the iron molecule. Well, then that makes the iron fatter and weaker because it rusts. Well, it wants to expand, so then it pushes on the concrete, which is bad at, and so it cracks the concrete up, and then the concrete busts up and you have to replace it. But if you could put some kind of material in there that was strong like rebar in tension and would help bind the concrete together like a big metal pole, but if it got wet, it didn't rust and expand, then you could build concrete stuff that lasts a long time. Remember the condo collapse about 2 or 3 years ago in Miami, that awful disaster where the pool deck fell down, and then a few minutes later that caused the entire condo to fall in and killed like 100 people. I think it was probably the worst civil engineering disaster we've had since the 1980s in the United States. So the culprit is sounding like, they don't have the report out yet, but the culprit is exactly that, the salty air of being near the ocean, slowly rusting the rebar out, weakening the concrete, causing the pool deck to collapse, and in the process that messed up the building and then made the building collapse. Well, if you could build it not using rebar, it would last forever. So that could be a topic. So it'd be fun to get back out to Colorado and follow up on that, because they also tried it on a street in Denver, so I could talk to Denver City. Spear Boulevard, I think they did a few blocks of it with this new type of concrete, and working with, I think, researchers from University of Nebraska. I'm trying to remember who they were working with. At the time, it had been in place, and they'd been tracking the deterioration of the concrete, and it was looking like, oh my gosh, we may have accidentally invented a 80-year road. And that's pretty amazing. If this research pans out, it could save us a lot of money in the long run and make some really nice stuff. So it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, thanks again, Aaron. Let's see. Sean writes, no idea if you remember me, but I contacted years ago about planning some traffic easing painted lines in my small town. My wife is now on the council. I'm proposing again. Oh, cool. Well, good luck, Sean. It'd be fun to see. Send me, if it works out, send me an email. It'll be fun to see. Oh boy, we have some super chats here. Pat Furry with a super chat. Pat writes, how do you convince local governments that traffic circles, roundabouts are a good idea, and where it is a good idea? You're getting into the whole philosophy of human persuasion. And I haven't done it. I've never gone to a city council and successfully advocated. And so perhaps I'm the wrong person to talk to. I do know that you never want to frame things as being bimodal. I had a science teacher in 9th grade who introduced me to the concept of a false dichotomy. This idea, I grew up in Utah. It's a very religious place. He's trying to teach biology and introduce us to the idea of natural selection and evolution. And he really wanted to hit home hard that a person didn't have to choose between their religious belief that may say the world was created one way and scientific knowledge and learning that suggests something else. And to basically say it's either or, when the truth of the matter is there's a whole complicated spectrum of answers in between. You know, where I went to a religious university, and kind of what they would hit on there is for people who were having I never had heartburn with natural selection. It was fun, made sense to me, but for those that did, they'd say, well, perhaps one could argue that God used natural selection as the process to bring the earth and its life into existence, you know, which actually is, if you think about it, more magnanimous and beautiful and divine, one could say, than this idea that it sort of just popped out of nowhere, you know, in a blink of an eye. That you know, a person who's a believer in God would go, wow, I mean, that God would spend eons, billions, trillions of years to get to the point where I exist right now. I think that's like Galileo smashing the Catholic Church's really silly notion that all the stars and the sun and the moon were pushed on crystal spheres, and that the earth, and that was it. It was the earth and like a mobile of little objects floating around above us, and then to find out that actually the earth is just this little amazing ball in a magnitude of this gigantic universe that we can't even begin to fathom of how huge and majestic that is. And to somebody who's a believer in God, I would think that would be far more majestic and awe-inspiring than living in this dumb little mobile, right? So where does this go with roundabouts? Well, I think people sort of have a built-in notion already of what they're comfortable with and what they know, what they've been taught. That's you have stoplights, and when a stoplight gets jammed, you tear it out and you build a wider intersection with a bigger stoplight. And we can make the mistake, like Galileo may have at first, where you roll up on the Catholic Church and you say, "You're dumb," and your Pope is dumb, and everybody's dumb. You know, well, Galileo ends up in house arrest. You know, you have to go really gently. You have to work with people where they're at, because they're not dumb, right? I mean, the truth is, from our perspective, we look up in the sky, and if we're holding still, then the stars are what's moving, not us. And that's a really jarring thing to try to warm somebody up to the idea, hey, actually we're moving and the stars are staying put. And that's really scary to think about. And if you add in salt in the wound and say, yeah, I'm going to drop on you this new idea of astronomy that's just going to blow your mind and shake you to the core of everything you've ever known, and you're dumb. Well, you're not going to get that far. So a lot of it is, how do we warm somebody up to completely rethinking the way the suburb works that's actually going to benefit them. You know, they're going to come away, you know, on low to medium volume streets of having a network of roundabouts. It's going to be a huge improvement over what they've already had. Well, I do know one thing is, then don't frame it as an us versus them. Well, you people with your old outdated stoplight ideas, you're dumb. you know, and so a lot of it is working backwards from where they're at, like really empathetically stopping and thinking and saying, okay, if I was in this skeptic's shoes where I really am scared, people don't dig their heels in because of hate. They don't dig their heels in because of even necessarily bigotry or whatever. It's fear. It's always fear. They're scared. They're afraid that you come take that stoplight out and the whole town is going to change. And next thing you know, there won't be any dogs anymore because people will eat them. And I don't know. People, they're not rational. And so it's baby stepping them there and saying, no, this is actually a good thing because you know, I don't know. So you guys first start and try to figure out, well, why are they a skeptic? You know, try to get them past the stage. Well, because they're going to do the same thing, right? They're going to say, well, how come you don't like roundabouts? Well, because roundabouts are dumb. Like, okay, and what else? And then work to say, okay, rather than trying to shoot down why they're dumb, well, I'm just worried roundabouts they're too slow and they don't move a lot of traffic. I don't want to come at them and say, well, actually, you're wrong. They move traffic faster. Like, well, that's not helpful. But you can say, okay, yeah, I can see that. You know, and you're right. A green light, you can nail that thing going 45 miles an hour and zoom through it really fast. Roundabout, you're always going to have to slow down to 10 or 15 miles an hour, even in the middle of the night. And so I can understand that you're concerned, because that does make the city a bit different. But one thing, have you considered how fast do we get to go through that light when it's red? When it goes to 0, right? You just sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait. Well, on the average, how many times do you hit the green light versus the red light, right? And if you average that out, you may find that even though there are times you get to zoom through at 45 miles per hour, on average, it's less than 15 miles an hour. That most of the time you're going a lot slower. And so over time, you go slower, but you go faster. So if they can start to warm up to that idea, they go, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I can see what you're saying. Then you can throw on the next thing that they may see as a negative. You could frame it as a positive. If you considered some little kids chasing a ball out in the street, and people go way too fast to this neighborhood anyway, right? Yeah, they do. So even though it's satisfying to nail that green light at 45 miles an hour, the ball runs out in the street and the kid chases it. Kid's gone. I mean, you're not just talking a death, you're talking an explosion, right? You go, oh yeah, that's really dangerous. We shouldn't have that. But if they're always slowing down to 15 miles per hour, what's that do to the crosswalk? If somebody, if somebody doesn't stop for the red and they're doing 45 miles an hour and I'm midway crosswalk, kaboom, rob explosion. But if somebody's doing 15, or somebody's approaching this, they can't approach it at 45. They have to approach it at 15. They hit me, well, broken leg, angry temper, but fixable. And so yeah, I understand why you're concerned about roundabouts actually being slower, but they're slower in the right way, So I don't know, I guess walking away from this hypothetical conversation, really being empathetic and getting in and trying to work backwards from the skeptic. I don't think like the urbanist type people on the internet, I think there's not enough of that, of empathetically. They're trying to push forward of like, we looked at the data, we hate cars, and we're gonna just steamroll that data forward because we're right and we're morally justified by the data. Probably, but I'm a skeptic because I love to drive my car. It's all I hear is the bicycle people are going to come and they're going to slash your tires. And so then that actually makes me put up a wall. It makes me less inclined to make the city better for them. But if they come at it and say, hey, we want to do this road diet. And I'm like, whoa, road diet. But we're going to take the road from 7 lanes to 5. Whoa. But we're going to get the bicycles out of the road because now they'll have their own lane. So you mean I won't see a bicycle in the middle of the car lane anymore? I'll just be able to just drive and not be stressed out because the bicycles have their own space? Yeah. I'm giving something up, but I'm getting something back. Now they have an in because they might be able to warm me up to the idea of narrowing the road, right? So that's, I say, work backwards from the skeptic empathetically. I think that's probably your best route to go. Have a good conversation with them. Like I say, it's not an us versus them thing. At the end of the day, we want the same stuff. So thanks again, Pat. Adam with the Super Chat says, hello, Road Guy Rob. Do cities need so many entry and exit ramps from highways to city streets? And can transit replace the highway ramps? Well, let's talk about one thing first is interchange spacing. Older cities in particular, when the freeways were new in the 50s and 60s, they didn't really know how often to make interchanges. And like you go into like old LA, like a 101 freeway through Hollywood, if you're following along on a desktop computer and you want to look, go west of downtown LA, and the 101 as it goes diagonally up through into Hollywood. And there are some wacky ramps that just don't make any sense. They dump into neighborhoods, and the ramps can sometimes be like a quarter mile apart from each other. And there's pluses and minuses to them. So on the one hand, the freeway runs like crap because you have weaving. If you're trying to optimize making the freeways work, and you want the freeways to work because every car you can put on the freeway is a car that's not driving through your neighborhood anymore. That's great. You want them to move. But if you have a car coming on and another car trying to come off and they only have a quarter mile to merge between Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard and Western Avenue, and the 101 just works like garbage. The best freeway in the world would have no ramps, right? It would start, you back out your driveway, and then there would be a freeway entrance right there, and you'd get on it, and you'd go 65 miles an hour to where your destination is, and then there'd be one off ramp, and you'd get off, and it would go right to the parking space where you want to park. That would be like the perfect freeway, right? Except, what if, instead of it starting at your driveway, it started a mile down the road, zooms past your house, all the traffic and smog and people making noise, and you can't even get on that freeway. And you're like, well, hey, I gotta live next to this thing, give me a ramp, let me on, right? So they add more ramps so you can use it, right? But as you add more ramps, so more people can use it, because that's only fair. You break it down. So today's modern highway engineers, I don't know the science behind it, but they've told me about 1.5 miles spacing works well for freeway interchanges. Typically you end up with about 1 mile, but 1.5 miles works just a little bit better because you have time for the merging to flush out. The problem we run into is where you have fewer ramps. The ones in Hollywood, as busy and congested as Hollywood is, some of those freeway off-ramps just exit to a stop sign. There's not really that much volume coming off each ramp because there's so many ramps to choose. Why would I get off at Western when I can get off at Sunset where I actually want to get off the freeway, right? But if I eliminated the ramp at Sunset and the ramp at Gower and all this, and now everybody has to exit to Hollywood Boulevard, well, that's going to be a very busy exit because it's not just the people wanting to exit to Hollywood Boulevard, but it's all the other exits that I eliminated, right? So now I have to widen Hollywood Boulevard, I have to put in big freeway interchanges and do a diverging diamond interchange and all this stuff. So it's always like, it's a balance, right? You know, you do too many freeway exits, you hurt the freeway, but maybe it interacts with the city maybe a little bit more gently. You go the other way, try to optimize the freeway and have fewer exits, but then that exit's going to be a real major to-do. You mentioned transit. Well, I think it's a bit apples and oranges because the transit users aren't using the freeway at all, right? They're running on their own transit corridor. You can reduce car volume. You know, I mean, what they call that, mode shift. So you have your different modes of transportation, cars, buses, trains, bikes, scooters, walking. And you can take people from one mode and say, hey, I don't need to drive anymore because there's this great new light rail line. So those drivers become passengers on this, and then that takes volume off the freeway and makes the freeway off-ramp less busy. And so that's a possibility, I suppose. But then you start getting into like really big picture stuff of like, well, why are people driving in the first place? Oh, well, because we built the neighborhood in a way that requires driving. Okay, well, then they're probably going to keep driving, right? So a lot of it is taking the big step back and not just looking at the highway and the number of ramps, like you're asking, but start to sit there and say, well, okay, you have a great bus stop with a nice fancy bus, and nobody takes it. Well, why? Well, next to the bus stop's a parking lot for McDonald's, and next to that's a parking lot for Walmart, and you know, and sitting there saying, well, okay, maybe it's not a transportation problem you've got, maybe it's a land use problem. Like maybe you should get in and allow some like walkable type development right by the bus stop, so when people get off the bus they can walk to their apartment or their condo or whatever, or, you know, I don't know. Like I say, I think the land use people assume, oh, if we just change the transportation system, it'll get better, and then the land use can catch up. And then the transportation people are going like, well, look, we're just trying to solve a purpose. You guys picked out this wacky land use. We're just trying to provide the ability to drive through it. And really, you gotta have to have both sides work together. So, and like I say, it gets very philosophical, and every place is different, and every specific freeway. But yeah, Adam, thank you again very much for the super chat. Let's see, keep scrolling down here. Casual Scrub writes, if California fixed its housing, I would love living in NorCal. I think the South Bay, like San Jose and stuff, is one of the best places I've ever been. If normal people could afford to live there. The problem is the people who are left are a bunch of old people who bought their houses in the 70s, and they can be a little obnoxious. And then like really rich people And it's like, it's a wonderful place. I don't know that I necessarily want these people as my neighbors. I want normal people as my neighbors, with like regular jobs and stuff. And they're all priced out. They're gone, So yeah, if you could figure out a way that a family of 4 could have a housing cost of like, $2,400 a month, because you have enough, it may not be a very big condo, but the $2,400 a month and the regular family can live there. Total, insurance, utilities, everything. That would be a game changer, But, let's see. Well, we got to keep walking here, but let me see if we can pick up another fun one to talk about while we do. There's somebody sent a super chat and then retracted their message, and that's too bad, because I would have loved to have read it. So, well, I don't know if you felt shy, but I appreciate the super chat regardless. And, like I say, hopefully in the future I can read that message. Max Cozy with the super chat writes, "Hi Rob, do you like the yellow or black traffic lights more? Also, do you have a favorite type of traffic light? I think the doghouse lights have a good look to them." Let's make that a goal today. Let's see if we can find a doghouse. So, if you don't know a doghouse traffic signal, when you get looking at the signal heads here, you have the normal, red, yellow, blue. No, red, yellow, green. And out west, we mount them, vertically up and down. But there's another type where imagine you have a single red on top, but then let's take that yellow light and that green light, shift them to the right just a little bit, like half a bulb to the right. And then we're going to do the same. We'll put a second yellow and green to the left. So it kind of makes this like house shape. They call them a dog house just because I think that's kind of cute. And the idea is when you would have a street where sometimes you'd have a left arrow and sometimes you'd want just a regular green circle, a green ball, to have the cars go, yield to the oncoming traffic instead of getting their own left turn arrow. You mount that up on the left. I think Las Vegas Boulevard, I don't think we're going to find one, but if I see one, I'll point it out. They were really common forever and ever until the flashing yellow came out. Flashing yellow, what they do now instead is they drop the green bulb down one light bulb and have 2 yellow arrows. And so when it's time to yield to oncoming traffic, instead of just having a green ball, to really emphasize, hey, you got to yield, you can have a blinking, flashing yellow left arrow, and then it raises up to a solid yellow arrow when the cycle's ending, when the phase is ending, and then it goes to a red arrow on the top. But when the traffic is really busy, it can drop all the way to the bottom and give you a green left arrow and give you, what engineers call a protected left turn because everybody else has stopped. So, the dog houses are disappearing. You're not seeing them as much anymore. As for me, what do I like better? Well, this is the California style you're starting to see here in Nevada. You do the back plate. Let's walk up closer to this one over here. So in sunny places where the sun shines a lot, Utah, California, Nevada, they always like to, Arizona, they put these plates on the back. Let me figure out how to zoom out here. There we go. All right, I'm going to turn around here so we can take a look at whoa. There we go. Turns out if you lock the tripod, it stays put, right? So they would put the back black plate on the black back plate to make it block out the sun, so it's easier to see the light bulbs in the traffic signal housing. They also put those little I forget what they're called, but the circle shapes that come out from it. So if you're sitting at a weird angle where you're not supposed to be paying attention to this light, it makes sure the light focuses only in the direction of the cars that are supposed to be looking at this, so you don't confuse a driver who's 45 or 60 degrees off. It's harder for them to see the signal. So you'll notice the yellow on there, it's not painted on there, it's actually like a tape. They, I think 3M and some other companies make it. And the idea is when you have a power outage, it's retroreflective. It's like what they make the road signs out of. And so they can actually come out with scissors and tape and just tape them on the existing back plates. And I think it kind of serves two purposes. One of them is, you know, the stoplight pops out and it's yellow, so you're actually paying attention to it. So you don't, you know, just in general, your visibility is a little bit better because you see this yellow thing hanging up in the air. But also, if the power goes out, your car's headlights are going to bounce off that yellow tape, make it easier to see. And it really caught my attention in the town I live in California. We had some pretty bad power outs during the wildfires. I think we're probably going to find out that Southern California Edison started the Eaton fire, which is very bad news because the last time a California utility accidentally started a fire, it made everybody's rates double. Talk to, if you ever have any friends that live in Sacramento or Fresno or Bakersfield, ask them about their power bill after the Paradise campfire where it burned down the town of Paradise and PG&E was found liable. Ask them about their PG&E rates. So Edison had been like half the price of PG&E, so all the people down in LA were doing okay. If we find out that Edison started that fire, it's going to be really bad news for a lot of us. But suddenly Edison was very cautious right after the Eaton fire. Without admitting any fault, because they were still investigating, they started preemptively turning all sorts of power off, including for 3 days my entire city of 60,000 people. So it was like practice for what life is going to be like after the big earthquake. And so we had no power, and at night you'd drive up to some of these street corners with the black back plates, and you couldn't even, you know, people were running the lights because the intersections were so dark. No street lights, no business lights, no parking lot lights, and no traffic signals because they've been off for days. Even if they had a battery backup, which most don't, good luck getting it to run for 3 days straight. And so you'd come up on the corner, you'd have to be really careful. You have to be really careful because they were hard to see. Now, I contrast that with a power outage I saw in West Sacramento, across the river from California's capital. West Sacramento had put a bunch of these strips on their back plates when they became really easy to see in the power outage. So I became a fan. I go, this stuff's probably really cheap. I mean, it's probably just a roll of tape that you buy from 3M. You send a technician out, strap these on. These are brand new traffic signals. They may have come with them pre-installed, or maybe the technician at NDOT put them on before they even threw them up there. The contractor did anyway. But, oh, I just noticed something. Look at this. You remember my video about the bouncing stoplights, and they had that like attenuator thing? Well, look what I just saw up here. Yeah, look at that. That's one of the little attenuators. Inside there is a counterweight. When the wind makes this long traffic signal pole want to start bouncing, because that thing is long. It's over, what, 6 lanes? You know, the wind catches it just right. It'll start going bobbing up and down. I had a whole video about this. So there's a company, I think out of Nebraska. I can't remember where he's based out of. But those attenuators up there, that's that counterweight. As the signal pole starts bobbing up and down, it can cancel it back out, straighten it back out. That takes stress off of the joint there where the signal pole connects to the vertical pole. Help make it last longer so it doesn't bust off in the wind. The company, he sent me a whole bunch of videos of places where, like in Texas and places with a lot of wind, the signal had broken apart. So, okay, so let's see where we're at here. So that's the hard part. You write a good chat. You write a really good super chat. And then I get way behind